Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Greg Collins filling in, and I am thrilled to be here with you, even though a lot of what's going on in the world, not exactly thrilling. Lots to get to today, lots to talk about. I want to start with Hurricane Ida. I want to start with some of the coverage of it, as well as just what's going on there. I was just talking to my producer, Phil, about how the infrastructure is so challenged already in places like New Orleans. There's so many difficulties in recovering from things like this that every time you're watching this on the news from afar, you can't help but feel immediate empathy, immediate concern and worry. So many without power, so much going on. And yet, one of the conversations on social media is about some of the weather guys who are getting into the thick of these situations. Al Roker is one of them. There was also a weather reporter on Fox, Robert Ray. Both of them tried to demonstrate how bad things were on the ground as far as the weather conditions, the wind, etc. Not quite as bad as maybe we had feared at some points, but certainly a lot of impact from what did occur. But I just think it's so interesting to watch these weather guys report in these environments to demonstrate to the world, certainly in some of these situations, exactly what is occurring, and people get mad. Roker had words for these individuals.
It's one of these things, and folks on Twitter have been, well, first of all, why is NBC putting him out there? I volunteered to come out here. This is what I do. I've done this for 40 years. Our crews, and we all make sure we're safe. We're not going to do something that's going to put ourselves at harm's way. Right. As much as I love the weather and I love NBC, I'm not going to risk my life for it. Secondly, a number of, well, he's too old to be doing this. Well, hey, guess what? Screw you.
I love that part of the coverage. Apparently, Roker checking out his own Twitter feed and seeing that a lot of people thought that he's not, the individual they should put out there for age-related reasons. They want him to retire like an athlete at a certain point. He is obviously not a fan.
Okay? Try to keep up. Keep up, okay? So
Al Roker.
These young punks. I will come after them. I will drop them like a bag of dirt.
One of my favorite pieces of audio over the weekend is Al Roker telling the young Twitter punks that he would drop them like a bag of dirt.
Keep up, okay? So
Al Roker.
These young punks. I will come after them. I will drop them like a bag of dirt.
Honestly, that is appropriate laughter from the other people working with Al that morning because that's wonderful. This also did happen with Robert Ray of Fox News. He tried to demonstrate the coverage by stepping outside. I think he was in a parking structure, and he wanted to stand outside. This isn't as funny. He's not, going after Twitter guys. But I was, I guess, amused at just how impactful it is. And, I will also say this. It's always confusing to me just how valuable this reporting actually is, because you are putting someone in danger. Like, no offense, Al. I don't want you to come after me, too. I don't want you to drop me like a bag of dirt. But I have to be honest, every time we see a weather person stand in the thick of a storm and demonstrate it's bad, I already knew it. I wasn't one of the people they were reporting to, but here's Robert Ray.
I'm going to step back slowly because I have an anemometer that I've been checking the wind speeds with. We've had gusts up to almost 90 miles an hour, sustained over 60. And the second I step out, you're going to see... I'm trying to get back, but I just want to show you the power of this wind right now. We're very close to the Mississippi River.
He had somebody run out there and help him. He did almost blow down the street, but he did survive, of course. It's interesting, and actually they will tell you that they're professionals. They know what they're doing. They can handle it just fine. Let's shift gears. I do have to talk, of course, about Afghanistan, about the ongoing issues there. We'll have a guest coming up on the show to actually discuss that, too. A retired major general from the Marines will give us his take on that operation and the failures of it. But I want to play a couple things. First, Biden, when talking about the hurricane and discussing some of the issues, was not supposed to take questions, I guess. This happens often with him. He took one, and then he chose not to answer it. This is what that sounds like.
I'm not supposed to take any questions, but go ahead.
Mr. President, on Afghanistan...
I'm not going to answer Afghanistan now.
Can you say if there's still an acute risk?
He also slammed the table, as you can hear. I don't know why the thing that's most amusing to me is that he would be surprised the question would be about Afghanistan. I don't understand why he was so surprised. I want to play that one more time, though.
President, on Afghanistan,
I'm not going to answer Afghanistan now.
can you say if there's still an
And slap right on the table. Man, come on. That's not what we're here to talk about, but it is going on, sir, and you are in charge of it last we checked, so we do ask you those questions. I don't know. It seems to make sense to me. I also want to play a little bit of audio from one of the two congressmen, Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton, who went on that secret trip. That secret trip, obviously, something that made a lot of people quite upset, but he got a better sense of what is on the ground. Now, I will say again that Seth is a Democrat, and he said that with just a couple days left, this operation ends tomorrow. It's just not going anywhere near the way that the White House would want you to believe it's going. There is not success on the ground as far as getting people out and evacuating people easily, safely, understanding all the different pieces in place. I know that there was an attempted rocket strike that was prevented, so there was defense mechanisms in place that did do a good job. That was a valuable protection of the airport in Kabul. So there are successes that come with these challenges and failures. I don't want to sound like I'm denying all of it, but here is someone who, even though he's being criticized by the Democrats, was on the ground and got to see firsthand what is occurring at the airport.
One of the things we learned on the ground there is that one of the biggest burdens on the troops are all these haphazard requests coming in from members of Congress and members of the administration in no sort of organized way. So the troops, again, on the ground are doing this incredibly heroic effort, not only out there in front of the gate to find these Afghans, but behind the wire in the airport to simply identify which ones we need to get, to sift through thousands and thousands of requests and figure out which ones we need to bring over the wire. So the system is not working very well.
The system is not working very well, and the system will end in about 24 hours or so, 48 hours. It'll all be over. We're to assume maybe there's going to be a way in which that changes. I guess it's still possible. But the announcements, the statements so far have been that that's not going to be reevaluated. I have to say, and I can't wait to talk to experts about this as well, but I just have to say that it's shocking to me that so few people are defending President Biden on both sides of the aisle. And yet there's a lot of people, and this is media people I'm talking about, and there's a lot of people just everyday people who are more defensive. If you ask someone on the left or someone on the right, the attack on the president or the defense of the president is pretty much uniform. And yet in the media right now, it does feel that this is one of the first true consensuses we've had in quite some time that this has gone poorly. And what's even more surprising or shocking to me, and I guess it shouldn't be, there's not a lot of reasons that when politicians lie, someone who especially does what I do, should be surprised by that, but that the administration hasn't chosen a different avenue of communication. They've continued to steer into the world of, we did this right, this was the only way to do it. And even the questions they're getting, the things that are lobbed at them at these press conferences are coming from all sides. They're coming from all people. As you saw a second ago, Biden is talking about something else, and someone wants to ask about Afghanistan, and it makes him mad. It makes him upset. Which, by the way, is just silly because it's obviously a concern. This is a moment where this president feels like he's not living up to the expectations of the office. And that is something, of course, that was said often about the guy in office last time. A lot of people who went after him said that they didn't believe that he was fit to be president for this reason, for that reason. Lindsey Graham is actually calling for Biden to be impeached. So we're going to go that whole road, the impeachment road again, potentially. But I just don't comprehend, and this maybe is just a political assumption or political observation, why politicians, why leaders never accept those moments where they are failing and then address them differently. And this is certainly happening with Biden right now. And anyone that says that it's not and that criticized Trump often feels like a hypocrite to me. Anyone that said that these moments and these things were not lived up to, these are the ways in which the last president didn't deserve the office he was in, and can look through this problem, look through this tragedy, whatever you want to call it, that is everything going on in Afghanistan, is about as biased as everyone else was last time a few years ago, or at least accused of being. So it makes no sense to me, and I continue to say it that way. We're expecting the Taliban to protect us. Our enemies, the people we were fighting, we're now hoping that they continue to keep the airport secure for the next couple days, and then we're going to leave a lot of people there. A lot of people there who we're to believe are Americans that don't want to leave, which makes no sense to me, or Afghans that helped us over the last 20 years that are certain to not, they're going to die. They're certain to be at great risk, their livelihood, because we leave. They will probably be killed by the Taliban. And that is as bad of a failure as it gets, Mr. President. And I do not understand how anybody can seem to think, this is the best they could do. This is the president we needed, not that last guy. He's doing a great job. I got to take a break. A lot more. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
Don't make me wear your mask. Are you trying to kill me? What happens if you have corona?
No need to socially distance while listening to your Chad Benson Show podcast. 4 out of 5 experts say so.
I'm a scientist. There is no corona.
But hurry before they change their mind. You know they will. Chad's podcast found on iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, and wherever you find your favorite COVID-free podcasts.
Oh my gosh. I kind of like it. I'm not going to lie.
This is the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Thrilled to have you with me. I want to take a second. I want to slow down. I would like to talk about what's going on as far as the debate, the raging fighting, the anger between those that mask, those that don't, those that vaccine, and those that don't. It is, of course, a conversation that so many of us are having every day. More politicians are requiring masks. More politicians are considering things like what's going on in New York as far as a requirement to show your vaccine card to go about your daily life. And these are, of course, to some of us, breaches in our freedoms. These are stepping too far. This is the slippery slope version of the government telling you how to live your life in a way that isn't well understood and is scary as far as what could come next, right? That's part of the argument. That's part of the belief, part of the concern. I am someone who is fully vaccinated. I've taken both vaccine shots. I am someone who is also willing to wear a mask when asked to do so by whoever, because I'm not sure that to me is the final straw. It's the final line that I won't cross in order for society to continue to move on. But I don't fight against those who feel differently. However, I did have a conversation on social media with a listener to another radio thing that I do. And this listener had said that she compares what's going on now, the fighting as far as masking or vaccines, to what was going on during the civil rights movement. She feels as though she is someone who is comparable to an African-American person that fought for rights years ago. And that's just inaccurate, to say the very least. So many comparisons we make are so challenged in today's society because maybe we don't remember the exact things going on then. And yet, as she says that to me, as she talks to me on social media about those beliefs, I realize as much as ever just how profound part of this conversation is to those on a certain side of it, to those on the side that don't want to play by the rules the other side is playing by. And I think that our society is lacking in ability now as much as ever, even though it's such a core fundamental belief of this country, to defend those we disagree with. As long as the reason we disagree isn't necessarily against the values of our society, right? I disagree with someone who says some things about not wanting the vaccine or not wanting the mask because I've chosen to get those things. And I mean the scientific part of that conversation. But if we go beyond that to the freedom part of the conversation, even though none of the things that I want to do are impacted by any of the rules in place because I've done the things that the government would like to see me do, but if someone else can't, if I stand outside a restaurant, look behind me, and someone can't get in, I have a problem with that. And we should all technically have a problem with that, as I said, because that's part of what made our country so lovely and valuable when it was founded. That was with the beliefs of the founders. And honestly, even the way that politics worked for a long time, you would fight tooth and nail with someone you shared Capitol Hill with, and then you'd go have a beer after. You'd go have dinner, you'd go mingle, and act a certain way. And we just don't do that anymore in our society. So when people ask, when they call in, when they write people on these shows, and actually even these political talk show hosts. There's 3 of them. 3 conservative hosts have passed away in the last few months from COVID-19 after being people that defended anti-mask, that defended anti-vax, people that might have chosen not to get those things, of course. I think all 3 were not vaccinated. But as you talk about those conversations and you point to those stories and you see the way it all transpires on things like social media, you realize how many people believe that there's a right and wrong to all of these conversations and that the other side has to listen. The other side has to listen to you. And I do think we lose the core argument or the core focus of that conversation. And that's why we can't come to agreement on this. That's why both sides can't see it as, well, I'm making a decision for me, you make a decision for you, and that's fine for you in a lot of these worlds. And it's because of that argument about our freedoms. And I just don't understand how people could truly look at this issue, look at the beliefs that we have in our society and say to themselves, no, we can force medicine on other individuals because the medicine makes sense to me. I can force it on anyone else in society. And actually, I even saw this viral social media post, and it's one of those where it says, share this with others or copy and paste if you believe this too. And it talks a couple times about how your decision is yours and my decision is mine, and this is why I chose to get the vaccine, or this is why I chose to go ahead and wear a mask or do whatever it is that I'm doing. And it's just a list of reasons why. And then at the end, it kind of ends very snarkily with yet again, so this is the choice for me to protect and care about my loved ones. And you go ahead and have the choice for you, whatever that choice may be. And I just think that that's tremendously, tremendously indicative of the way that these conversations actually go. We are not open-minded. We can preface the conversation with, I will let you do you and I do me. But if you're not willing to go ahead and defend those beliefs, those thoughts, those arguments that are not your own, but do agree with the values of our society, then I don't think you're being as open-minded as you're claiming to be. And I do think that's something we need to do better. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. I got more coming up in just a little bit. Remember, it is okay to support someone you don't totally agree with.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Thrilled to be here and thrilled to welcome my next guest. He is a retired U.S. Marine Corps Major General. Vincent Coglianese joins the show. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Craig. Thanks for having me.
Thrilled to have you on. Now, do I call you sir throughout the entirety of this interview? I just want to make sure I get this right.
No, nobody calls me sir anymore. I just get yelled at home.
So you have a unique experience that I'd love to share with the audience, and that's going to dovetail into my first question. You were on the ground early on in the war in Afghanistan. You were sent over. You were in Bagram. You were in Kabul. You were in all the places being talked about on the news all the time. At the beginning of this mission, a 20-year endless war mission in which both our last president and our current president believed that ending the mission was right. However, the conditions on the ground have certainly changed over those last few months, to say the least. So I have to ask you, of your memories of the beginning of the war, what were the objectives and how were we doing throughout the time maybe you were there and even after you left, as far as all of that is concerned?
Yeah, I think it's important perspective because 20 years, there's a lot of people that don't remember. So this is right after 9/11. I was at Central Command, which is the command, responsible for the Middle East as a combatant command. I was a lieutenant colonel, a young lieutenant colonel at the time, working for a guy named Gary Harrell. If you remember the guy at Black Hawk Down, the Delta Force commander, who's kind of infamous and still famous to this day. And we deployed early on. General Franks wanted him in theater right after basically the Taliban was pushed out of Kabul. It was a special operations CIA operation, very, very successful, teaming with the United Front, which is the Northern Alliance and the Pashtun tribes, and really just kicking the Taliban's ass. And so they did. It was a soft operation. They came in and just absolutely kicked ass. Remember, this is right after 9/11. Everybody wanted a piece of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. And there was a big Al-Qaeda presence there, too, from around the world, from Uzbekistan. I mean, all different and hardcore Al-Qaeda fighters that would die, to the end. And so special operations kicked ass. I was there in November in 2001. I was in Kabul, and really nobody was in Kabul except some CIA and Fifth Group guys. And I was at Bagram very, very early on when no planes were really landing. The first C-17 to land in Bagram was actually Rumsfeld when he came in to meet Karzai and Afim Khan, which Afim Khan was Massoud's, lead military guy for the northern side, and Karzai. And so this is when we basically appointed Karzai to be the next president and stuff. So, Rumsfeld told me when he was there, not that I was an important guy or anything, but he wanted us to go in, basically kick butt and get out. And basically special operations and also the Marines who came in down in Mattis at the time, came down in Kandahar through Pakistan and were successful down there. But it was special operations that really kicked ass with the CIA and just drove the Taliban, killed a whole bunch of Al-Qaeda and Taliban, and basically won the war at that time. And we were supposed to leave.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. A lot of the questions, a lot of the conversations we've had now about the endless war, the 20-year war, what was the purpose of still being there? And it sounds like, and even though, as you point out, and a lot of people have forgotten this, the true objective was to prevent that area from being an area that really harbored a lot of anti-American terrorist activity that really allowed for it, really protected those who were intent on harming our country. As you're seeing the deterioration now, as you're seeing the Taliban immediately rise back into power there, and the risk of, I know that they hate ISIS, I guess, that's what I hear, but the risk of Al-Qaeda, the risk of any other of those terrorist organizations immediately taking those positions back and building whatever the force is, the power there, and potentially trying to strike our country again. What are your concerns about those realities since you were fighting them 20 years ago?
So, I think if you go back to perspective, the thing was, I remember talking to a lead CIA agent, I think it was Bernstein, actually, who was Jawbreaker, wrote a book and stuff, but basically said, hey, this place is going to be a mess in a matter of months. In other words, the Taliban's going to be back in here and everything else. And maybe that was an acceptable risk because the message was, if you do this, we'll come in and kill you.
Sure.
And they knew we could, and we were very successful. But then the nation building, then the military. I mean, everybody. I blame the larger military because everybody wanted to be a part of this, and grew. So right now, it couldn't be a worse situation because not only did we created a vacuum, we outfitted these guys and with unbelievable amount of weaponry, which will be used, but both they'll sell it. Use it, be outfitted. Yeah. When we fought them, they basically had Soviet-made weapons and didn't have the sophistication of the weapons that we left them now. So we basically outfitted our enemy.
It's crazy too. You're even using the enemy as not you, but our government now is using that enemy as protection around the airport. That's been the reporting that we're hearing. The current administration is working very closely with the Taliban, and somehow, and this is the most mind-boggling of things, asking for permission to do some things or asking for help to do some things as far as getting people out or providing a list of individuals that were high-value individuals that needed to be removed from the country. Right. These are things that just make no sense to me now as we describe this as the enemy, not some ally.
No, it makes absolutely no sense. And, I mean, the million-dollar question is, who – now, this is a central command owns the area. Obviously, the president makes the final decision, and it goes through. Depending on personalities, the Secretary of Defense have more influence than the National Security Advisor, and you don't know all that. Hopefully, that all comes out. Who really influenced the president? Who made the final decision? But it's buffoonery. It's buffoonery. That Kabul is.
Sure.
I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. Bagram. I used to drive from Bagram to Kabul every day. And so Bagram was absolutely, as news, very defendable.
I'd like to.
Go ahead.
That you didn't have multiple points of extraction available. That's surprising. I want to ask you this. If you were running the exit strategy, if you were running the operation to get our people out, and that is both the civilians, the American citizens, and then, of course, the military, is there anything that sticks out to you as far as the way that this occurred and all these different conversations that are had about, oh, there's no other way this could have occurred? Is there anything that you would have done differently? Is it as simple as keeping that second exit point, that second airport available? Or are there other things you've identified as you don't know why they did it this way?
Yeah, I mean, first thing is, had they not predict the collapse, by pulling out the support? I mean, the Afghans would fight if we provided them air and direct support, whether it's HIMARS or indirect fires to them, because we provide the ISR, we could see the Taliban coming, we provide them the supporting arms, and then Taliban would fight. Once we pull that out, and once again, I'm not privy to the latest intelligence and the briefings or anything else, but it was just that's the real crime. How could they not see this coming? Yeah. And are we that bad? And somebody has to be held accountable for being either stupid or just misread the information. Everybody else, I think, would come. And so,
well, and as you say that too, it just the president of the United States is the one that makes the final decision. You're within the military for a long time. I've never served because I'm way too much of a coward to do that. But in all honesty, the president would make the final decision, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, and once again, his decision is going to be as probably as good as the information provided. So it'd be interesting to see who provided what information, what recommendations were made. I hear different scuttlebutts that other recommendations were made, but it just kind of blows my mind as that we didn't that we pulled out like we did, and now, like you said, the Taliban. We've been killing these guys for 20 years. They are our mortal enemy, and now we're asking them to protect us. And by the way, it's just ludicrous. It's ludicrous, and that's why America. I think that's why whether you're right or left or whatever, everybody's upset about this. This is not it's not political. Well, it's stupidity, and you're right. And people have to be held accountable. And
yes. And I have to ask you this one last question. I'm just curious about this. As someone who fought at the beginning stages of this, and as you said, some of the objectives at the time because of 9/11 were to root out terrorism. If 2,500 troops were still effectively doing that, if we had had no American deaths in over a year, if we had succeeded as much as we had and kept the enemy at bay, whether that enemy is the Taliban or the enemy is the unforeseen forces that might be those terrorist organizations, whether it's ISIS-K, ISIS-X, whatever, what was the problem? I guess this is the military version of the question, in leaving those forces there. I know that so many desired for us to get out. We have forces that stay in other places throughout the world. Where would the true risk have been in continuing, at least until it made more sense somehow, to remove our forces from that area?
No, I mean, I think you're dead on. I mean, if, Monday quarterback, even when it was happening, I would have conversations with friends and family and saying that I would have left the counterterrorism force there. We kind of owe it to them, right? We create this vacuum. We ask them to come to our side. We promise that we'll be there for them. And I think we just owe it to them. Also, you got to remember, this is a great recruiting tool for the bad guys. Al-Qaeda, whether it's a fundraising. And so we couldn't have messed this up worse. And I know so many veterans who served are so frustrated and are so angry at the administration, at the current military leadership, whoever made those decisions. And I don't want to because I don't know who other than the president who has the final say, who actually was the real influence on this decision. But it's criminal, absolutely criminal. Probably the worst, stupidest military behavior I've ever seen. You go back, think about Beirut bombing and stuff like that. There was people relieved for that and fired for that. So there's got to be accountability, and the idea that we moved over 100,000 people is somehow successful, who we don't even know who they are, is another ludicrous measure of success.
Yeah, and now we're still trying to figure out who we're even supposed to be helping get out in the next 2 days before, I guess, that operation will just end. I thank you so much for joining us. He's retired. He's retired United States Marine Corps Major General Vincent Coglianese. I want to ask you one last thing, though, before I let you go. As someone who fought in the beginning of this war and saw the way it ended, do you have any sort of emotional reaction as far as the success you had so quickly on the ground when we sent you and when you commanded others there, and the way in which this has ended? Is there any final thought?
Just anger of stupidity, and people making decisions not for the right reasons. Just anger, and I think like the rest of the American public, and then all these young men and women who've sacrificed literally their lives, and then we have stupid people making stupid decisions.
Yeah, just like you said, and I think a lot of people believe, and maybe that is the solace in all of this, is there's a lot of anger from a lot of American people watching this every single day. Thank you again so much for joining us, sir.
All right, Craig, thank you.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in. A quick break, a lot more in a bit.
Warning, no snowflake zone. Uninformed opinions are in danger of melting. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I saw an article over the weekend talking about why movie trailers slow down pop music. Why they do. Why it's called trailerizing, and why it occurs apparently is to get you to pay better attention. If you're someone that listens to pop music, or at least someone familiar with whatever song they choose to put in a trailer. And obviously a lot of us, even if you don't like that kind of music, hear it all the time and it gets stuck in your brain. When you hear something noticeable, but hear it in a different way, there's an odd component to it. It's familiar, yet it's not. It gets you to pay closer attention. Here is an example.
You looking for Candyman. He's the monster that's part of this neighborhood.
Why are you drawn to this?
I'm hoping to spread the story all about Candyman. The mirror invites you to summon him. You should say his name.
Candyman. Candyman.
Candyman. Candyman.
Don't say that. Candyman.
I think I made a mistake. I brought him back.
Okay, I can't do any more of it. It is so epic, whatever that movie, the Candyman movie is. But the say my name, you start to hear at the end that's added in. All right, fine. We can play a little bit more.
Candyman isn't real!
Something's happening to me.
He had a purpose for you. To be another one of his terrible stories.
I guess he found me.
Okay. You have no idea why you're listening to this. If you just turned on the radio, you're like, what is this mess of a thing? That is Say My Name. I think that's Destiny's Child. And it's put into the Candyman trailer. And because of that song, having that access, that added component, you cared more about that trailer, according to science, darn it, and just the loudness and the epicness of it. But apparently this works with anything. If I wanted to have a long conversation about mask mandates or vaccines, and I slowed down a pop song and put it below my take, you might pay more attention. I don't know if I've ever really noticed this when it's occurred, but this is a very popular, very common practice in the world of trailers, and trailers always make movies look better. I will say that too. I don't think I've ever seen a movie and thought, man, this was better than the trailer. It's always the opposite for whatever reason, and maybe it's just the way they utilize music. Also today, for anyone that's looking to celebrate it, is National Beach Day. A lucky 2% of us visit the beach 365 days a year. The rest of us nowhere near as lucky. The most popular answer to the question, how often do you go to the beach, is about once or twice a year. 47% of people say that. 19% say they actually only go every few years. And 7% have never been to a beach at all, which probably is something that needs to get fixed for Americans that have never been. But out of that 2%, apparently people that go every day, they obviously seem very, very happy about that decision. So in honor of them, if you want to grab your banana boat sunscreen, your copper tone, your Hawaiian tropic, whatever it is that you want to grab, go ahead, go out and hit the beach if you can today in some of those fancy areas we have. I just love the fact that it's just 2% of people that go all the time and probably aren't even hearing this, actually, or maybe they bring the radio with them. Okay, one last thing, and then we will take a break. Online trolls, according to a new study, are not people that are fueled by anonymity. They're not people that go online and complain there because that's the only place they're jerks. Apparently, they're jerks everywhere. So if you know a jerk in your life, he's probably a troll on social media. You need to tell him to stop. Chad Benson Show, Craig Collins filling in.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Jake Tapper talked to Dr. Anthony Fauci. They talked about the Florida swag that Governor Ron DeSantis has put out there, not to Fauci, Florida. And also the vermectin. I think that's what it is. Ivermectin. I got it right. Took me a bit. That's what it is. It is a horse pill that people are using because some have touted the benefits of it, potentially, ivermectin, as far as the world of treating or preventing COVID-19. We'll get both of those topics covered between Jake and between Fauci.
Well, I mean, whoever is attacking me, just a reflection of the politicization of what should be a purely public health issue. And it's really unfortunate. You know, they're attacking personally me because I'm a visible person, but I'm merely articulating the proper public health practices that are recommended strongly by an organization, and that organization is the CDC. So they like to pick out a certain person because they could make that person, you know, the personification of political divides, which is so unfortunate, Jake. We should put all of that aside. We have an extraordinary problem that's killing people in the United States.
I agree with what Dr. Fauci said there. I wish that he would do a better job of putting it aside as well. There have been times, maybe some could argue valuable and some would obviously argue not, where Dr. Fauci has not told the truth, where he's been in front of a microphone, where he's been asked a certain question, whether it's by a reporter in the news or a politician, and he's politicized his answer. He's done things like advocate against certain mask wearing very early on in the pandemic, although it's brought up a lot. When Dr. Fauci obviously didn't seem to think that what he was saying was true. He just wanted to protect that mask use so it can funnel to the right people. He's done this other times. He's talked about the vaccine and its efficacy and the need for those who are vaccinated to wear a mask differently than even the CDC at times. Or right up to when the CDC changes their mind on some of that stuff, because there's a political benefit to it. So when Dr. Fauci is out there saying that he's upset that this merchandise exists, that people are politicizing him, I think that the reality is sometimes you have to understand what you've done to be a part of that problem. And Dr. Fauci has said because he's a person out there, because he's a public figure, Dr. Fauci, for whatever reason, has chosen to take all these interviews, to be a part of all these conversations, and to want to be at the forefront of this conversation. Obviously, a valuable expert in the field. I'm not denying that. But someone who's chosen to be publicly out there as often as he has as many times as he has on so many different platforms, then even less shocked should be his reaction to the things that occur when you are the face and self-appointed so in a lot of ways to these things. I don't think that our government was begging, especially our previous administration, that one medical expert of being the only person doing these interviews. These could have been done by several other people, a collection of people, and it wouldn't be as individualized to you. Jake did also talk a little bit about some other things. He asked him about ivermectin, as I said a second ago.
Because some Americans are trying to use an anti-parasite horse drug called ivermectin to treat coronavirus, to prevent contracting coronavirus. What would you tell someone who is considering taking that drug?
Don't do it. There's no evidence whatsoever that works, and it could.
There's no evidence whatsoever that works, and it could, if you take a large dose of it, actually do more harm than good for sure. So that is, for whatever reason, a conversation we're also having. I do think sometimes that some of that gets blown out of proportion too, because I guess if there's an appropriate dose of ivermectin for a human that doesn't cause some of the hospital stays that we've seen, then maybe it's unfair in some ways to criticize, but I don't know. I have not taken it. I haven't turned to look at the evidence or the information about it. I'm not that concerned. And I do, again, think that that's a somewhat political conversation that CNN is trying to have with Dr. Fauci, because it was conservative outlets that were discussing ivermectin to begin with. All right, let's move on to other news, things that I care about more than the news of the day at times. There was a Chihuahua beauty pageant, and it got more than 800 dogs. More than 800 contestants showed up. I believe this was in the UK at a Chihuahua beauty pageant. And you know what's lovely about this story to me, and the summer fun theme that apparently occurred for this Miss Chihuahua Town, which is what it was called. Twiglet, by the way, is the name of the Chihuahua that won. She is now the Miss Chihuahua Town, the crown winner as of this past few days. But how many people responded to something this silly to me, and they probably take it seriously. That's fine. But we need more of this in our lives. We need to report on these stories. We need to discuss these things in the news in greater detail. Apparently, several of the people just hand-sewed their own costumes. That's what one of the photographers who was at the event said. It was crazy. People make these costumes by hand for their dogs, and they show up and they try to win Miss Chihuahua Town. The event, I guess, was founded in 2017, and it's been hosted every year since, and it's gaining popularity, not losing it year in and year out. We need more of this. Maybe I throw a Miss Chihuahua Town somewhere in the United States and just see how it goes. See how many people get the reprieve. We need to go back to normal life, or ridiculous versions of normal society, because I guess I shouldn't even really call that normal, to get away from all the crap that is the world and the news that we hear every single day. In other news, again, these are just stories, I guess, more for me. I did the stories for you. Now I'm doing the silly ones for me. A pile of raw chicken was discovered in an airport luggage carousel, which did prompt a warning from the TSA. Now, I want to tell you, it's just a lump of raw chicken. It's not in a suitcase or in luggage of any kind. Maybe it got out of the luggage, I guess, at some point. Maybe they were separated, because I can't imagine somebody checked that and got that through the first airport to get it all the way to Seattle. But there is video on a TSA Instagram there of just a lump of chicken that's just sitting there. And this is, according to the TSA, this is a personal foul on the carousel. See what they're doing there. Can chickens fly? Well, assuredly no poultry is flying like this. This is all just from their account. We hear at one time these wings and thighs were cooped up in a cooler somewhere between baggage and the carousel. They became free range. So many jokes, so many puns made by whatever millennial or Gen Z person is writing for that Twitter account, and I'm quite happy about it. The statement was obtained by several news outlets, including Newsweek. A spokesperson for the TSA said, "Our understanding is that it fell out of a cooler behind the block of chicken," and you can see the chicken is still cooler shaped. By the way, they point that out. It does still seem more like an unhealthy, it's not the correct circle version of it. Our guess is that the owner did not think about the lid coming out and did not tape it securely enough. I don't know how I would have reacted. If I was grabbing my luggage off the carousel after landing in Seattle and I just saw a raw chicken pass by me, I would probably be entertained, obviously, as I'm talking about it here. I would probably be quite entertained. then I'd probably make sure to find the person that was waiting for their chicken. And I assume you immediately throw that out. I assume that that's a done product, even if it's still kind of frozen. I can't imagine anybody is consuming that after the fact. And if they do, maybe you brag about it. Maybe you say that the chicken was once on the carousel. I don't know. Maybe there's other ways. It probably could become a non-fungible token, right? That's probably the end result for this photo of the chicken on the carousel is someone's going to pay $1 million a year from now to own that photo as a non-fungible token. And then I retire from society. And then I go ahead and get into my cave that I should be building. And I just wait out for the apocalypse or whatever, because that's the end. That's the end for all of us, even though I do kind of enjoy it, I guess, although I would not be bidding on the non-fungible chicken token if it does someday be I want to get the credit, though. Anybody that heard this, I want to be the one that is pointed to first as he's the guy that said this could be a lot of money as a non-fungible token. I just want that as a feather in my cap. Quick break, a lot more. This is Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
The Chad Benson Show, where we reach across the aisle and occasionally poke someone in the eye.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Dating's got to be hard, especially post-pandemic. There's probably a lot of challenges if you're someone who's looking to mingle or trying to mingle during the pandemic. You probably came up with enough reasons or enough challenges that maybe you didn't even stick into that world. There is a man out there, though, who wants to change all that for himself and himself only. This guy created a dating website, and he is the only man on it, which I think is hilarious. I don't think he's actually the first person to create one of these. I think I remember one from about a year ago. But here is a trailer for that very dating website, and you could be the lucky person to go on a date with this man.
It's been huge. I think something now in the ballpark of 200 eligible women have reached out to me, which is crazy. Every day I look at it all and I just try to respond to as many as possible. It's been like genuinely people who want to meet and think it's a funny idea. I have something like 13 dates on the books right now, and that number is just going to keep growing. So, I wanted to put my weight on there, my tax bracket. Look, this is what you're getting. It's not changing overnight to impress you, and I'm not ashamed of it.
All right, that is actually him putting just some more information out there. DateColinO'Brien.com is the website. You can date Colin O'Brien. As he said, he put some stats out there about himself. He's got an about section. You can start a conversation by joining. You can't be another eligible guy on that platform, though, and try to date him or date someone else that way. You got to date Colin O'Brien, which I think is tremendous. And the fact that he's had such a resounding amount of response to it is actually pretty incredible too, to say the very least. More power to him, if he keeps going down that road and it winds up being a success. Although I don't know if you tell that story at the wedding. I don't know if at some point the missus is like, oh, how'd you meet him? Well, I went to datecolinobrien.com and he was the only option. And I guess I was successful. It's like an internet version of the Hunger Games, and there's only one option, and it's that guy for the winner. A couple spoke out after a video game-themed cake topper went viral on social media. I found this tremendously interesting. It was a Call of Duty theme that they put up on their wedding cake. And these are the things that people care about, at least on the internet, or at least as far as our current society goes. Maybe more than they should, but maybe this is the right amount now. I think I've usually railed against these kind of things in the past, but now I quite like it. Essentially, what's on the cake topper is a man sitting in a chair playing a video game. The video game is Call of Duty, and he's wearing his tux. And then he has a bride standing behind him, fully decked out, ready to go, waiting for the video game to be completed. I don't know if this is something that the wife created and the husband didn't know about. I don't know if this is something that was joked about for a while, but I do imagine this is a fight that they've certainly had. After you get married, though, and after the cake highlights the amount of interest that the man has in video games and the wife doesn't like so much, do you think that fight gets worse or better? Do you think there's a time where maybe she wants to do something and he says no to doing that activity because he's got to get some Call of Duty in? and she says something back, and he goes, do you remember the wedding cake? You signed up for this. You agreed to this. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's used against him forever. I'm not really sure. But I just love the fact that it's viral in general. Also, an actress, a famous, relatively famous, I guess, Disney actress who was on a show called Even Steven when she was younger. She's now 37 years old. Said she made millions of dollars during her Disney television and movie career, because I guess she starred in some movies as well. Her name is Christy Carlson Romano. She has lost all of it, though. She said she really regrets not investing her money wisely because, and I assume this is true, that if you're successful at a young age at anything, certainly in the world of acting, but I think at anything, you probably assume to keep going down that road. You probably don't think that your Hollywood career would slow down. It would just speed up. And actually, Shia LaBeouf is the other person who was on that TV show, and he has certainly gone on to have a career. However successful you think it is fine. He's been in quite a few other things. She said that she didn't get a house. She didn't take any money and store it away at all. She just kind of lived life differently than the way the rest of us live life for a while. That money I used toward going to college, she said as well, but she didn't take very much care of it. I was never told how much money I was making. Money didn't have a purpose for her because she was so young when she was making the money too, which I'm not defending. I've just never really thought about that. That if you have these giant checks being cashed maybe in your family's name or put in a bank account for you, if you actually don't have parents who run wild with it on their own, you don't really comprehend it maybe at an age when you probably shouldn't. And as I said, I imagine she thought she'd be a long-running Hollywood star, and she is, of course, apparently not because she's lost it all. She did say that she, at 21, found herself making ridiculous purchases on items. I want to say something about that too, actually. When I think back to a younger me, a 20-something-year-old me, if somebody had handed me $1 million, I would have done stupid things with it. There's no way to say I would have tried to listen to the financial experts out there in the world, but I think I would have failed in a lot of ways. It's just the age you're at. And I imagine that part of the problem then is giving people access to all that money, even if it's theirs, and not finding a better way to control it. But she bought vintage Corvettes. She bought all kinds of things at one time in her life, and she now very much regrets it because those things do not hold the value they used to hold. I'm sorry about that. I wish we could do better for everybody here. But as I said, I probably would also make those financial calls. One other quick story in the news. New homeowners. I love this story, maybe because I've recently purchased a home too. The first home I've ever owned. I'm a millennial. I'm in my 30s. I've never owned one before. Odd thing to admit, but I'm going there. New homeowners moved into a place and found a note written by the previous owners who'd lived there since the 70s. The husband, the family, the couple that no longer owned the house had actually passed away within the house, and then the wife was in a nursing home. But they had written a note at some point while they were living in the house that said, "We laughed, we loved, cried, and played here. We pray you will too. God bless you." And they had written that into the wall. So that was actually kind of a carved-in thing that was not so easy to remove if someone were unhappy with it. But the couple that moved in loved it. And I do think in honor of them that this is the kind of thing that more of us should do. This couple out of New Jersey said they got goosebumps. Honestly, they felt a bit teary-eyed when they saw it because of how emotional, how meaningful it is. And certainly for a couple that had lived there for as long as they had, since 1971, it's even more I think, emotional and impactful. But I think I'm going to do that at some point today. And I encourage you to, too. Find a place somewhere in your home and carve, "We loved, laughed, cried, and played here. We pray you will, too. God bless you," for the new owners whenever they take that house, because the homes will outlast us, of course, all the time. And that is in honor of the couple that owned that house previously and had done that before. I love that story so much. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about it, but it was in a pantry wall, and I think, as I said, that it's a good move for all of us to do it. All right, I have a lot more to talk about. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show here today. We have, of course, continued coverage of what's going on as far as Afghanistan is concerned. Only 2 days until that process, whatever it is over.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I'm not going to play audio of this because it's not in a language that a lot of us will understand, but it's Afghan TV and a TV presenter talking about the fall of Afghanistan and the rise of the Taliban with armed Taliban soldiers standing behind him in the shot. It is crazy to see. It's being shared all over social media. I will put the social media photos up on the Craig Collins Show on Facebook. We'll get it up on the Chad Benson Show as well. But it's just crazy to see this sort of thing occur at all. And that the message from the Taliban and the message from this presenter is that everything's fine. We're doing great. And that's the level of arrogance that exists for this force, whatever you want to call them, the Taliban, that they would be willing to do this, to be behind the camera, and actually purposefully so, I imagine, just to demonstrate their strength. But it's out there. It's a real thing that happened and exists. And another reason that I'm so happy that I'm in the United States of America from this country and don't ever have to deal with this kind of thing. We can hate our press too, but certainly not in this way. And of course, with everything going on and all the fear and the danger that still is that situation, I'm sure that this is nowhere near as fun for people to see who are still fighting with that. So my heart goes out to you. I just can't understand some of the things I witness sometimes. All right, moving on to other news. Also, sad news. Ed Asner passed away. Ed Asner, of course, famous actor in all kinds of things throughout his career. We have a little set of clips of things that he's in. He's in the movie Up, of course, Mary Tyler Moore Show. So many different things from Ed Asner. Here's a real quick career trailer, I guess we're going to call it.
I am nobody's master, got it? I don't want you here, and I don't want you here. I'm stuck with you.
The clothometer suddenly just dropped down to 0. There's just no Christmas spirit anymore.
I think Ed Asner, as an actor, is as good as for what he does as anybody.
Sometimes feels that we do harm to ourselves by taking part in this endeavor.
Get your life in order. At this point, you're like the meat in your fridge.
What do you do on casual Friday?
Well, we just come in and do our work, but we dress casually.
I don't like it.
He's going to be remembered as Lou Grant in both his shows. He'll be remembered as a very diversified actor who won a lot of Emmys.
I was always worried about being a coward. I don't think I am a coward.
I know Ed really believes that you leave the planet better off than you found it. And Ed is definitively going to do that.
91 years old, Ed Asner. I do remember him, and I know we're all going to have different memories depending on your generation. I do remember him most in things like Elf, for whatever reason, or Up. I did see him in Lou Grant and the Mary Tyler Moore Show, but his roles throughout the history of his career, and I actually got a chance to meet him a couple times, have been tremendously impressive. He will be missed a lot. He is certainly the type of actor that I don't think we have a lot of actors like that anymore in our society. Moving on to other news, other things out there in the world. Al Roker is very upset with Twitter punks. I find this audio very entertaining. Of course, Hurricane Ida is something that has been covered a lot in the news. It's a discussion that's happening throughout the day today, throughout the days coming, as to just the extent of damage there. And some of these weather guys, they got to go. They got to report in the thick of it, and they got to let us know what's going on. And Twitter doesn't seem to agree with that. They seem to have a problem with someone like an Al Roker reporting in weather conditions that seem dangerous, to say the very least. I'm not saying that I disagree with Twitter on this, because I'm not sure that I've ever really understood why the weather forecaster has to be thrown into the hurricane to tell us that it's a bad thing. But Roker seems to very much think that it makes sense.
It's one of these things, and folks on Twitter have been, well, first of all, why is NBC putting him out there? I volunteered to come out here. This is what I do. I've done this for 40 years. Our crews, and we all make sure we're safe. We're not going to do something that's going to put ourselves at harm's way. Right. As much as I love the weather and I love NBC, I'm not going to risk my life for it. Secondly, a number of people, well, he's too old to be doing this. Well, hey, guess what? Screw you, okay? Try to keep up. Keep up, okay? So
Al Roker.
These young punks. I will come after them. I will drop them like a bag of dirt.
I'm not going to get sick of that audio of Al Roker saying that he's going to drop young punks like a bag of dirt. I would like to see that fight, by the way. Jake Paul or Logan Paul, I imagine, fighting an Al Roker. I'm not saying that I think it would go well for Al, but it would be tremendously entertaining if somehow it did.
So
Al Rooker.
These young punks. I will come after them. I will drop them like a bag of dirt.
I can't help it. I'm wildly entertained by that audio, and I'm going to be entertained by it all day. All right, let's move on again. Lindsey Graham was asked what he would do differently as far as the Afghanistan exit is concerned. Lindsey Graham, like many, I think, are saying now, many politicians, many people on different sides of this conversation, that it maybe never made sense to leave. However much that would not have been the thing that Americans wanted to hear, however much that would be against some of the beliefs that maybe a lot of us had without being aware of what's going on the ground. But if a small amount of force was capable of preventing the Taliban from taking over and preventing terrorists from being potentially a risk of redeveloping in the area and it someday striking us, then maybe it did make sense that endless war, quote unquote, continued. Here is Lindsey on that with that very question. What would you do differently?
Well, number one, I wouldn't have withdrawn. I would have kept the counterterrorism forces on the ground. Your reporter indicated that when we have people on the ground working with indigenous forces, that's the best insurance policy against another 9/11. I would have held the Taliban to the conditions set out in the agreement with Trump. But let me tell you where I think we're at. This is a cataclysmic, just a fair beyond my ability.
Okay, we gotta go through that again. I'm not trying to make fun of Lindsey, but I do understand that moment when you're on radio and or television, you can't get the word out. You got to just shift, and it is funny to hear when it's somebody else.
Just a fair beyond.
Cataclysmic is the word you were looking for. Continue, Mr. Graham.
My ability to describe it. It's been a very emotional couple of days for all of us. The parade of horribles are about to unfold. We're leaving thousands of Afghan allies behind who fought bravely with us. We're going to leave hundreds of American citizens behind. The chance of another 9/11 just went through the roof. These drone attacks will not degrade ISIS. The number of ISIS fighters have doubled. We've turned our back on our allies, who's going to help us in the future, and we've set the conditions for another 9/11. I've never been more worried about an attack on our homeland than I am right now, and we did not end this war.
I don't know if that's politicizing the conversation or not, what he says at the end there, because he's not the only politician that I've heard say that they're concerned about the attacks that could happen here on U.S. soil again as the rise in whatever terrorist organizations take hold there outside of the Taliban, outside of ISIS maybe. But whatever does occur over the next few months, years, may wind up causing another potential risk here in our own country. I'll play it again.
Set the conditions for another 9/11. I've never been more worried about an attack on our homeland than I am right now, and we did not end this war.
And again, I'm not sure if that's politicizing it or not, but I am genuinely concerned as I hear conversations like that, different worries. And that is the point, I guess. When we first went to that country, the desire wasn't necessarily to fight a never-ending civil war, but it was to prevent enemies of our country from having a stronghold, a position, a place where they could build their power, where they could build their force. We went there to prevent that, and we did a great job at preventing that. And if we, with just a small force, could continue to do that, even if it didn't make sense to most Americans, I guess, I pray that we don't ever come to a time when we realize that what Lindsey Graham said was true, though. I do pray very much that we never have an occurrence like the one we had on September 11th, because, of course, that's the kind of tragedy that would re-educate all of society to the reasons why we were there in the first place. And I imagine if we ever do see something like that again, we would fight that never-ending war happily for the rest of our existence, I imagine, although maybe not. Maybe as time goes back and forth, you just kind of forget again. Anyway, one other quick topic before I take a break here. I saw this in the New York Post. The title is Why Social Status is as Important as Shelter, Food, and Water. And actually, the article talks about how food, shelter, and Facebook likes are the most important things in our society. It's actually a review of a brand new book out there that dives into it and makes that argument as well. The author of that book, The Status Game on Social Positions and How We Use It, he says, his name is William Storr, that it's enormously important. It affects your physical health, your mental health, et cetera, et cetera. And I actually read through a lot of it as far as the review goes, and thought quite a bit about some of the points that are at least being talked about publicly right now. And I don't know that I disagree with the author of this book, and it demonstrates yet another problem with what is social media, and probably a great reason for a lot of us to not be on it. And as I say that to you, I tell you that I'll share the information, the story there on Facebook.com/Greg Collins Show, and I'm sure you can find it on other social media outlets because unfortunately there's parts of that that are just an aspect of our life. So maybe what we need to do, if we don't all run away and stop using social media to begin with, maybe what we really need to do is stop taking it so seriously. Talk more about the Chihuahua beauty pageants that exist in our society there, and maybe just ban all serious conversation. And I'm kidding when I say that, by the way. I'm a proponent for free speech. I'm not trying to ban things of value. But I do think that for whatever reason, whether it's the serious or the silly, conversations, likes, status on social media is important. I wouldn't put it up there as important as shelter, food, and water like that author does. But depending on your age, especially for young people now, I think that it's way up there as far as the priority list goes, especially if you live in a society like ours, where a lot of people who'd be concerned about social media are not concerned about shelter, food, and water. Those are things that they expect within a lot of their lives. And so maybe that's why this becomes so important as well. But let's get back to silly things, or just have silly days where no one's allowed to have any serious conversations or pander for likes in certain ways. Everyone has to put up silly posts on social media to get back to what it used to be. And maybe we can fix it. I don't know. We probably can't. All right, quick break. A lot more. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
I can't take it anymore!
Well, get over it. It's time to forge a new path with your very own political cartographer, Chad.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Thrilled to be here. First, just a quick report. New Zealand has reported its first Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine death. Someone who took the COVID-19 vaccine, the Pfizer version of it, died of myocarditis, which is something that's been talked about a lot in the news as well. They are connecting the dots between those things and just reporting it out there into the world. I don't know that we've seen a large number of these cases or even questionable cases anywhere else. So it's not something that I'm trying to talk to you about as if it needs to raise your concern level tremendously high in this world. But it is something that I think it does demonstrate more than anything else to me, the lack of understanding we still have in a lot of these worlds, a lot of these places on all of this, that we still need more time. Now, I'm not saying that because I think it should impact your decision on whether or not you get the vaccine or whatever it is you choose to do. But there's probably still things we'll learn, information we'll know that won't come out for years. This may be the beginning of whether or not it's this kind of report again, a bunch of reports on impacts and effects of all different kinds of things. And honestly, that's part of what's living through the pandemic is kind of uniquely about, is that we don't truly know as much as we say we know at times, a lot of times, and that information does change profoundly. All right, let's move on to dating terms, something I'm sure everybody is tremendously more interested in than some of the other sad things going on in the world. This dating term, roaching, has finally been defined for people, or at least maybe we've added a name to something that a lot of people probably do. This is when you're newly single, I imagine, or at least you've been single for a bit, and you don't know if you're going to commit to whatever partner you're dating, so you hide other relationships from a new partner. You roach, I guess, much like the animal, and you just have a bunch of different things going on that are all kind of hidden behind the walls. I don't know if people describe this as cheating. They say that it's not actually supposed to be cheating because you're not committed to any relationship. I guess that's some other term. I guess roach wouldn't be appropriate for that. But if you're roaching right now and you're not consuming something you're smoking, then I guess what you're doing is fair game, according to many. I don't know why these dating terms always amuse me. I don't know why. I don't know who creates them. I'd like to know that quite a bit, but they're out there. I don't know why we need to describe these things too, by the way. I'm not sure if that's something that we truly needed. In other romantic news, A couple charged wedding guests $120 each for no showing at the wedding. The couple are from Chicago. Their names are Doug and Deidre. They recently had a destination wedding in Jamaica. If you RSVP'd, if you did some certain things, they then expected you to show, of course, but maybe not everybody makes it to your destination wedding in Jamaica, even if they had good intentions, even if they wanted to go. Maybe it doesn't happen for them. And at least some of the people who didn't go got invoices. One couple got an invoice for $240. That's $120 each for a seat at the reception that was left empty. I got married at a destination location. I got married in Mexico. I did not send an invoice to anyone that didn't go to the wedding. And there were some empty seats. There were. If you go somewhere that's difficult to travel to for all kinds of reasons, my wife being from there, her family, a lot easier for them to attend the wedding. But when you do that, I think you just expect this. The fact that the couple went to Jamaica and then thought, all right, if you RSVP'd and didn't show up, that's on you. You owe us money now. And also to come up with an exact total for the amount of money, it seems petty and wrong. And I don't know. I guess that couple is well suited for each other if they both thought that was a good idea. But I have to assume one of the two of those people in their brand new relationship was kind of trying to talk the other person out of sending an invoice to friends and family. I imagine it had to be the first official fight of the relationship. One other quick thing in other news, and this was also something in the New York Post. Someone wrote into one of the advice columns and asked if it was wrong in the workplace to use a term of endearment or a nickname for a coworker. The example, honey, was given, and of course this was in connection to Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo, and that question actually had a fairly interesting answer to me in the Post, saying that depending on what the affectionate term is, that, you'd have to really get to know the person well enough to make sure it was safe and okay. They actually wrote, is Greggy Poo really supposed to be an affectionate term? Heck yeah. Everyone knows that if you are going in for a work hug, the other person better be giving body language that it is welcome and then embrace it. Otherwise, you shouldn't do it. And the same holds true of a lot of these things, even if they're very dated, like honey, lovely, darling. I think you just need to double check. And this does fall into then kind of the new take out there that if you're a guy in the workplace or a supervisor of some kind in the workplace, it might benefit you to never really be alone with a female employee, even at a group or a work-related thing, to always have a member. I mean, it makes the HR profession tremendously hard, right? But maybe you just have the HR person around all the time. I don't know. That might be the best way to prevent any of these situations from going rogue. Or I guess we all just wear cameras all the time, and we just go down that road that a lot of us don't want to be down, I'm sure. But it's one or the other. As far as I don't think you want to have a fun, a friendly, and enjoyable workplace, but you got to make sure to be as safe as possible in 2021. All right, I got to take a break. A lot more. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I'd like to continue to talk about the politicians, the congressmen who decided to take a secret trip to Kabul to see the airport on their own, to see it from their own perspective and to report back on it. I think that even though the argument could be made, and it is being made a lot, that just made a problem that's already difficult a little bit worse. You added 2 more people when you're trying to extract people out. But that secret trip, the ability to go and see something going on the ground as a lawmaker, makes sense to me. It's the kind of conversation I have all the time about how so many of these rules, so many of these requirements, the closing of businesses or whatever it is that a decision made by someone in power, if they don't understand the reality of the situation, if they don't go to the mom and pop shop and close them down themselves, then maybe they're not fully aware of the impact they're having or the truth behind a situation that's, of course, being spun day in and day out. And I want to turn to some of the audio from Seth Moulton, who was one of the two members of the group that did this. He's a Democratic congressman. And what he said about it, about going there, about what he learned, and about the inability to get this done in time with just a day or so left on that timeline is tremendously interesting to me.
One of the things we learned on the ground there is that one of the biggest burdens on the troops are all these haphazard requests coming in from members of Congress and members of the administration in no sort of organized way. So the troops, again, on the ground are doing this incredibly heroic effort, not only out there in front of the gate to find these Afghans, but behind the wire in the airport to simply identify which ones we need to get, to sift through thousands and thousands of requests and figure out which ones we need to bring over the wire. So the system is not working very well.
It's not, to say the very least, it is not working very well. In other news, I actually also saw this. There's a viral audio of a Marine who's going to give up his retirement benefit because of the conversations he's been having somewhat publicly about this. What I think is so interesting about this story, in all honesty, as I see kind of the things playing out, because he was already critical. The Marine was already out there being critical of the way in which this was all ending, about the way in which a lot of things were being handled. And that is not new necessarily. That is not unique. There are a lot of military individuals, a lot of people that feel as though this is utterly, utterly disappointing, upsetting. It angers so many because of the way in which the end of this mission is going and what the idea was starting out. But I guess this specific Marine was challenged by some of the other people that he had worked with during his career to just give up retirement benefits and all kinds of things. And even though I'm not going to play the audio because he was entitled to quite a bit in retirement, he makes several mentions of his wife and whether or not she's going to stay with him, which was tremendously sad to hear. And then also threw out some social media pages in which you could donate money directly to her. He wasn't asking for it. He said that GoFundMes were being created, and if you really wanted to give money to his family, just give it directly to his wife. So I thought that was interesting. But he also talked about this, how he's going to go ahead and stand by his word. He's critical of the military right now. He's critical of what's going on, and he wants to be a man of action, not just words. So he is giving up any entitlement he had in retirement.
I want to make the announcement today, after 17 years, I'm currently not pending legal action, and I could stay in the Marine Corps for another 3 years, but I don't think that's the path I'm on. I'm resigning my commission as a United States Marine, effective now. I'm sure there's some MAR admin on how I'm supposed to do that, and I'll work through that. But I am forfeiting my retirement, all entitlements. I don't want a single dollar. I don't want any money from the VA. I don't want any VA benefits. I'm sure I'm entitled to 100%. I, breathed on the smell and smoke of burning for years. I don't want any of it.
He doesn't want any of it. I don't know why that's not. I mean, I think that's or powerful audio. I think people are discussing this Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Schiller's story. And actually, he had put up a Facebook post first where he was very critical. He came under fire, and since he was still a member of the military, there were ways in which he could be asked to be on the sidelines, as he said, for a while, for a few years, and then he would get benefits and all kinds of other things, up to $2 million in pension after 17 years of military service. But just not wanting any of it demonstrates the anger that exists within the community that fought this war for us. And as we talk about individuals who have varying degrees of appreciation for that sort of commitment, that sort of sacrifice, what's going on there, and the criticism we all wage on this issue, I think it's important to continue to highlight those military people who are as fed up or more fed up than anyone else is in this situation, because it takes a lot, I assume, to be so angry you walk away from $2 million, and yet that is a story that is out there that is all over the news. I do want to also just cover some quick things about what's going on in Kabul. Last we know, U.S. carried out some airstrikes on ISIS-K suicide bombers, including a group of what they believe to be bombers that were intent to do harm. There may have been civilian casualties. I know that's something that's being looked into right now as well. The U.S. also told all of the U.S. citizens, to leave the airport over the weekend at one point due to that credible threat, even though I guess they used a drone strike to prevent it. They did tell all U.S. citizens to leave. It's tremendously difficult to travel between that airport to get back and to leave again. So there's certainly something to be said about that type of advice and what that means as far as just the last couple days left in any sort of timeline that's given out. As I said, CENTCOM is investigating to see those civilian casualties and how that's going to occur and what the conversation is beyond that. I can't believe that we will have no military presence of any kind after this whole withdrawal is over. I just can't believe. I don't know how quickly it'll transpire that something like that would need to happen again, but it's just my belief as we're seeing this escalate. I mean, remember, if we go back a few months, the Taliban was in control of none of Afghanistan, and they took it over ridiculously quickly. And then ISIS-K starts attacking us while we still have people in harm's way. I can't imagine what the timeline is to being back at a situation where we are worrisome again. There was also a rocket strike, and attempted rockets were fired at Kabul airport, and they were prevented. They were intercepted by anti-missile systems. So again, a success in a way for our military and a demonstration of capabilities. And yet we're still begging the Taliban, who is providing us some amount of security, to go ahead and help us out. And the other thing that does make me mad, and maybe it shouldn't make me mad. Oh, no, I probably should. The President of the United States just refuses to talk about this. I don't think I've seen this quite like this before. Yet the VP, Kamala Harris, also avoid press while going on a trip of her own. And I'm not sure that the hatred for the press or the criticism of the press from past administrations were ever quite the same as this just ignoring of any and all opportunities to have conversations with the American public through the press, which is what the current administration does. They refuse. They have very scripted, tailored people that they call on and ask questions of and talk to. And obviously Biden holds those pieces of paper and says who he's allowed to talk to and who he's not allowed to talk to, which should worry a lot of us that our president can't make a decision like that. I mean, hold on. Actually, quick pause before I play this audio. Think about that for a second. The commander-in-chief, the person responsible for the final decision on life and death situations that may be costing Americans lives and certainly cost at least 13 soldiers their lives, can't decide who to call on at a press conference. He can't pick what individuals to say their name and listen to their question and respond back, but we expect him to make a profoundly more difficult decision. Here he is just rejecting a question about Afghanistan.
I'm not supposed to take any questions, but go ahead.
Mr. President, on Afghanistan.
I'm not going to answer Afghanistan now.
Can you see if there's still an acute risk?
Slams on the table. So upset that someone would ask him that. He made the decision. He called on the person. Darn it. Okay, I'm done with this. This is the commander-in-chief of our country. This is the person we expect to be the last. They always say that about the VP, right? The vice president wants to be the second to last person in the room, the person with the president making the final decision. But at the end of the day, it's on them. Biden has no idea what members of press are members he should call on or not. It's not a good sign. That's not usually, I think that we'd exclude him from other decision making if he can't get there. Quick break, a lot more. This is the Craig Collins fill-in on the Chad Benson Show.
If you're part of the politically exhausted majority, don't fear. Your time to be validated and rejuvenated is here. Wake up. It's the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Thrilled to have you with us. I want to hit on a topic that probably means a lot to a lot of people. How do you know if you're underpaid at your job? There's a new set, 5 different, signs that you're underpaid at your job. I guess we can do this in case in reverse order. These are the top 5 biggest things you may notice as problems that mean that you got to go in and ask the boss for a little bit more money. The company you work for has gotten much bigger than when you started. Your salary has not. If you've seen a lot of growth around you, you've been like, man, everybody seems fancier. Or maybe even just look outside and see if some of the newer employees and the management positions are pulling up in fancier cars. If that's happening, that means your company's doing very, very well. And they have yet to share the wealth with you. Now, I'm not telling you that it'll work. by the way. Businesses make decisions for all kinds of reasons. If you blast in there and you say things the way I just said them, odds are it might not go that well for you. You haven't gotten a raise in years is another one, even if your company hasn't gone through some sort of transition while you've been there. If it's been a long enough amount of time, there's not really a review process in place, as some companies don't have one of those. It does make sense, it says, according to this article, to go in and ask your employer for a cost of living increase in your pay. This is something that people might be somewhat scared to do because there's not really any way to even say you deserve it. Because that is the thing. Whenever I think about trying to ask an employer for more money, I think the assumption is you got to demonstrate how you deserve it. You got to say, this is what I'm doing now, and you paid me to do these other things, and so obviously I'm more important now, so pay me more money. That's not really the case in the cost of living raise. Your benefits stink is number 3 on this list of 5 things that say that you're not getting paid enough at your gig. A more modest salary might be okay, but only if you're getting tremendously wonderful benefits, which I don't know if they really exist at all anymore as far as healthcare and all those things are concerned. But apparently if you have bad benefits, at least according to this survey of people online, it said that means you should go ask for more money. I couldn't disagree with that point more, because if a company isn't spending on the benefits, I don't think they're going to be spending on you. But that's just me again. Maybe go your own road. Number 2, this is the one that I expected, the one that I thought from the beginning. Your job duties have changed significantly, but your pay has not. You've been asked to take on other responsibilities that are either an upgrade, a raise, and a promotion kind of gig, or just additional things you weren't asked to do before. And that's the only scenario where I really recall a lot of people giving you the advice to go ahead and go in and ask for a raise. And the number 1 way that you know you're underpaid and you should ask for more money, this is probably the riskiest of all of them, is you look up the salary for a job like yours online. There are websites like Glassdoor that do that. And if you see the median salary, and you can even be specific to where you live in the country, is not what you're making, then you can use that as quote-unquote leverage to convince your employer to give you a sweet, sweet raise, and that is probably not going to work. I'm going to be honest there, because it's the same thing with any other fight, right? If you have any argument, any conversation with anybody, they say that what you don't want to do is turn the other person into the bad guy. And actually, this might be a nice way to kind of transition back to that conversation about wearing masks, or that conversation about getting the vaccine and whatnot, and why a lot of the messaging failed so profoundly from politicians, from whoever. And honestly, probably even if you're a person that has a strong belief one way or the other, it fails when you talk to someone who thinks the opposite thing of you. And it's that you don't want to go into a conversation telling someone they're bad and then telling them why, because they're not going to listen. There's no scenario where someone sits down, and I guess back in this case, where you're trying to get a raise from an employer, and you're like, this is why you're being mean, and you got to stop. No one ever, it's never that way. You got to be on the same team. You got to be going the same road. There's got to be a lot more agreement and no fingers pointed, I think, for you to succeed. In other news, I saw this and enjoyed it a lot. Carol Baskin sold Joe Exotic's former zoo. That is right. The evil Carol Baskin, the one that a lot of people still think deserves to go to jail herself, assumed ownership of Joe Exotic Zoo in Oklahoma as part of a legal settlement, and she has now dismantled and sold it off. She made $140,000. She sold it for $140,000, but it came with some stipulations. The property cannot be used as a zoo or a house of exotic animals for the next 100 years. So whoever purchased it cannot flip it and make it into a zoo again. The owners cannot name any business on the property after Tiger King. That's a real petty one, and one that was tremendously interesting to me. Not only can you not operate a zoo, but even if you want to call it like Tiger King's Museum or something, that is also not allowed. Its former name, GW Zoo, which was Joe's names, or even the letters Tiger and Big Cat, are also not allowed. Carol's husband said, quote, the husband she has now, if it became an RV park or storage unit, we don't want to see it named Tiger King RV Park. We would like the 20 years of mistreatment of animals there to be forgotten and to be history. I don't know if I would buy an RV from Tiger King RV Park, by the way. I don't know if I rolled up to that place and I'd be like, oh man, this has got to be the place to buy my next RV. I imagine not. But it is just so interesting when you talked about that story, and when we all got quite a bit obsessed with it, maybe some of us more than others, around this time or a little bit earlier last year that this is the end result of that story. Another story, shifting gears again. 2 Little League World Series players got caught looking at a phone thing they shouldn't have been looking at during a game. The series itself included both Michigan and Ohio. You probably have already heard about it, but during the game, this was last week, some players from Texas were sitting in the outfield when one kid showed them a picture on his phone. The other kid was immediately, and according to the article I found, transfixed. The other kid was just completely locked in to what was going on that phone. It was a picture of a woman who had a very large front end. She had a very, very large, she had big boobs. I think I'm allowed to say that. The woman was clothed, by the way. This wasn't like dirty, but the woman was just impressive in certain ways. And I guess still young Little League boys even more so. And that's why they got in trouble. And that's all now come out. There's video. There's things about it. It's hilarious. Quick break, a lot more. Chad Benson Show. Greg Collins filling in.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. My next guest is the host of the legal podcast, at least he will tell me the legal podcast, Legal Face Off from the WGN Podcast Network. Also a host of Trial by Vinyl, a podcast where they debate the best albums in just the most entertaining of ways. Rich Lenkov, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Craig. Pleasure to be here.
Thrilled to have you. So I've been seeing this pop up again and again, story after story. There's one out of Gainesville. There's a couple more out of Illinois of employees, and this is even city employees, trying to fight back, or healthcare employees, against requirements for vaccine or losing their job. Employers requiring employees to wear masks, get vaccinated, all that kind of good stuff. And there's a big fight going on. Now, as this is something that's a bit of an area of expertise for you, workplace things like that, I'd like to just ask you, legally, and I'm not trying to ask either one of us to have an opinion about the merits of the argument on a personal level, but legally, all of these arguments are in your opinion, more likely than not going to succeed, correct?
That's right. I mean, we've talked about this before. Private employers have the right to mandate that you not only wear a mask at work, but also that you get vaccinated. Again, the idea is that these are private workplaces and that your employer has the right to enforce reasonable rules that are meant to not discriminate or not to pick on people, but to ensure the safety of coworkers. And courts have held that requiring vaccinations falls within that reasonable category. There are, generally exceptions for one's health or for religious objections, but besides that, a private employer has the right to enforce those mandates.
And does the fact that the vaccine, at least the Pfizer one, is now fully FDA approved even weigh into that? Are those parts of the conversation that need to be arguments made in the courtroom, or do they not matter as much as maybe people think they do?
Yeah, it doesn't matter as much. I mean, the Pfizer vaccine that was not formally approved by the CDC or FDA has been widely disseminated now for many months, and employers have been forcing employees to, get that or other vaccinations. So that doesn't matter as much as, as long as it's been accepted in society and public health, and that is allowable for your employees, or employers, I should say.
Just one other question about that, and then I want to move on to the Nirvana Baby, because I'm so entertained, even though it's been a week now, by the Nirvana Baby. But does the high-profile nature of this kind of disagreement, this kind of case after legal case, create anything different in this world? Is there a chance that you see one of the more high-profile versions of this land in front of the Supreme Court? Are those kind of conversations that we'll be having, or do you think that also will have no impact, just the heightened public awareness of this argument and both sides of it? Does that impact any of the the way in which you think it could go from a legal standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the fact that this is unprecedented and the fact that it's such a high-profile situation makes, it possible that prior case law, prior precedents wouldn't apply. I think that's what you're getting at. But again, in this case, it has been litigated already, and I don't think this is the type of situation, specifically whether an employer can force you to get vaccinated or wear a mask. I don't think that is the kind of case the Supreme Court will take.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's move on to Spencer Eldon, someone who has wildly entertained me in the last week, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's just been such an interesting story. He was 4 months old when he was on the famous cover of a Nirvana album. Obviously, something that meant a lot of things to a lot of people, and something that he has personally utilized several times throughout his life to gain himself fame, to gain himself all kinds of different things. Social media post after social media post, recreating it, interviews, conversations. In one interview that's resurfaced on social media, he talked about how he would pick up women based on his fame until they found out that he wasn't rich because of his fame, and then maybe the relationships didn't go as well as he would hope. But I have to ask you, he is trying to sue the band. He's trying to sue Courtney Love and a few other members as well for a ridiculous amount of money, and he says it's because he was sexually exploited, 1, and 2, his parents never signed an agreement. Would you take the case for the Nirvana baby?
I certainly wouldn't, right? But there are attorneys who apparently are, because the suit is proceeding. I defend these kind of lawsuits frequently, and not exactly this kind, but yeah, I think it's pretty frivolous, to be honest. I think it's ridiculous. I don't think it'll survive very long, especially given that it's in federal court. Federal court judges don't have a lot of patience for non-meritorious lawsuits, although they're filed every day. So, yeah, I mean, your question, I think, is a really good one. And the reason I think, Craig, that this case won't really survive much longer is really twofold. I mean, you touched on the two main allegations. Number one, that his parents did not sign a release allowing this image to be exploited, to be used. Who knows if that's the case? It's unlikely, very unlikely, that a record company would use a photo for an album cover, though, without verifying that a release exists signed by the parents. It's just really hard to believe, especially for a high-profile album. But let's even assume that no release exists. Does that mean that he has a claim for child pornography? I mean, it's hard to say it without laughing, right? Because we all know the iconic album cover. We've all seen it. The baby's genitals are sticking out. I understand that. But to say that involves human trafficking, that involves child pornography, in my opinion, is nuts, right? For child pornography to be established, you have to have some sexually graphic portrayal. You have to have some prurient interest, some sexual connotation. None of that exists here, I think, by any stretch of the definition, and especially by the language of the federal child pornography statute. I just don't think it applies.
Well, let me ask you it this way then, because you see high-profile cases, not like this per se, but where people go after celebrities for all different kinds of things. Is the hope here just to have a settlement because court cases are so expensive to litigate in general? Is the real true goal to make an argument, and in this case, I guess, make one that has an amount of public interest, an amount of public awareness that then causes people to write a check that they know they don't truly have to write if they fight through it, but they're going to pay somebody because you have to pay lawyers and all these other individuals to fight this case for you. So do you think that's the end goal of this, or do you think this individual really believes that they're the victim of these things?
100% a money grab. I mean, just like the baby on the cover is grabbing that dollar bill or swimming after the dollar bill, right? I mean, It's 100%, in my opinion, meant to generate a quick settlement, right? I mean, to your point, even the most frivolous lawsuits involve some expense, some cost. And when you're suing, 7 or 8 people, it's even more complicated. And unfortunately, the quickest resolution seems to be throwing a lot of money at these cases. Now, not always. I have, thankfully, a lot of clients who actually believe in something called, morals and principle, and they don't just throw money at cases. But that's expensive, right? So, yes, the reality of litigation is that a lot of lawsuits are filed just to generate a quick settlement, and many defendants do in fact throw money at cases to make them go away.
Have you been consuming any of the R. Kelly trial? I know that there's some things out there. I don't think there's any video of this out there, but there's, scenes from the days that the artists render and whatnot. Are you following the R. Kelly sex trafficking trial in New York?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's, you have to follow it in my line of work, of course, but it's really interesting. When the first 2 weeks of testimony have been really filled with pretty graphic descriptions of misconduct against, women and girls. I mean, we've known about these accusations forever, but the amount of people who are testifying and the fact that, one described a plot to illegally marry or, have R. Kelly marry a 15-year-old girl who he thought was pregnant. And the fact, honestly, that this is such it's a racketeering case is really what it is. So it's a little more than just a sexual assault case. The government is really setting forth a very methodical, broad racketeering case that portrays R. Kelly as kind of a kingpin of a criminal scheme, not just to recruit women, but to sort of boost his overall brand, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, I have to be honest about just getting some of the information as it's been coming out about this case and all the things involved. I do always wonder when it comes to things like, sexual abuse or sex trafficking, how much proof is eventually uncovered to demonstrate the reality of those accusations, because some of the horrible things that he's done or accused to have done to some of these women, it does feel as though it's just personal testimony. And I don't know in those cases how difficult it is to prove a lot of that stuff. So I ask you that, as far as what you've seen in this case, are you seeing a lot of valuable information coming forward that helps in a legal way, no matter what we think publicly, as far as the likelihood that R. Kelly did a lot of these horrible things? You have to prove that in the court of law. So do you think that that's occurring as well?
Yeah, for sure. And of course, a lot of that comes down to just credibility. Your question is, who do you believe, basically, and that comes down to credibility. But remember, the more people that come forward, basic common sense is that the more likely they are to be believed, right? We saw that in the Cosby case, lots of other, the Weinstein case. One woman versus one man, sure, that might be a he said, she said, but 6, 7, 8 women, it's hard to look the other way. The other thing, Craig, really quickly, that's really different about this case, it's really the first case in the Me Too era in which the verdict hinges on the enablers that prosecutors say are understanding, are critical to understanding how this whole scheme worked. So this, a lot of the testimony we're hearing about this network of managers and his entourage and employees who surrounded R. Kelly that really allowed this all to happen. So that's a little, different thing that we haven't seen too often before.
Sure. And a lot of those people are providing that testimony maybe with some kind of protections, do you think, or no?
Yes, for sure. There have been deals cut, and obviously the prosecution is looking for the big fish, and it's not uncommon to go after people upstream, from the big target.
Makes sense. Well, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. Rich Lenkov, the co-host of Legal Face-Off, the preeminent, am I saying that correctly, preeminent legal podcast in all of the country from the WGN family of podcasts, WGN Plus.
I mean, I think preeminent is an understatement, but we'll go with that.
Okay. And then Trial by Vinyl, another fun show that you put out there every couple weeks, I think, in which you debate the merits of one album versus another in entertaining but legal ways.
That's absolutely correct. You've
awesome.
Articulated very well.
Thank you so much, sir. It's like I do this for a living. I'll talk to you again soon. Rich Lenkov from both of those two podcasts. Check them out. Quick break, a lot more. Craig Collins filling in on The Chad Benson Show.
Helen Keller is a Nazi terrorist that is a male. Is that what you're telling me right now?
Yeah.
Are you thinking of Hitler?
Who's Hitler?
Vaccines work, but only the Chad Benson Show is 100% effective against stupidity.
Do you know what D-Day is? D-Day.
In person? A rapper?
God, Karen, you are so stupid.
Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and wherever you find your favorite woke-free podcasts. This is the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. Thrilled to be here with you. Now, I want to tell you a story. It's actually my own personal experience, but I feel like it matters to everybody. I recently had a a treatment done at a health clinic. I wouldn't say it's like a doctor's office. It's like an in-between. It's not an ER. It's not a doctor's office. It's called an urgent care. You can go there when you need something done quickly. And the reason I went there was for a splinter in my toe. And I feel very much like I've failed as a man that I had to have a professional take a splinter out of my toe. That's just something that I feel, and I can't not feel it. But the reason I'm telling anyone this story at all, much less people on the radio this story, is because of my experience being at a clinic like that, a clinic that is dealing with a certain amount of COVID cases, and not being there for a coronavirus-related reason, and the way that went. I went in. My wife had urged me for a couple days after trying to remove the splinter on her own that I should probably get it treated. It was starting to look a little funky. And I was like, I think it'll be fine. It's a splinter. It can't be that bad. But eventually I went in. And it was first relief from a couple of the people who treated me. Some of the nurses were like, you're here for what now? And then I would show them my toe. And they were like, oh, my God, this isn't COVID. That's wonderful. And then I think there was also a sense of, yeah, we really don't need to be wasting our time on this. But I will say this. I do want to defend myself one more way if I can for just a second. The inevitable doctor who removed the splinter from my toe did tell me that it was the biggest one she'd ever seen. I did think several times about office quotes I could have used in response to that. But she said as she was pulling the splinter out that it was humongous and just kept getting bigger and that it made me feel better when I asked her if it was something that seemed like it was medically relevant, especially now. And I did start to wonder as I was sitting there in one of those waiting rooms, waiting to be treated, how many people right now might not make a decision to go, whether or not they're afraid to get coronavirus if there's a lot of cases in their area, or what it would be that would cause them to do that. But I was saying that I actually did kind of feel bad. There was a point where I was like, man, and I had every right to get something treated that, again, the most humongous one she'd ever seen is what I was told. And I will save that memory. But at the same time, I was just, it added a different layer to all the arguments, all the conversations we have on all sides of that equation, and how it impacts the people that we go and get help from. And I'm not trying to get up on a soapbox and tell you one way or another how to decide things. I'm certainly been very clear and will continue to be clear on all radio things I'm on that you deserve the right to choose a lot of that stuff. But it was even more eye-opening to, again, as I said, go to a medical, not a mental, a medical health facility, and to go there for a reason that wasn't the one that I guess everyone was just expecting. In other news, PBS has debuted a brand new series about work. It's called Future of Work. It explores the new normal, and actually it does a deep dive into the current state of work and how the future might evolve there. It even has robots that are mentioned as far as the likelihood that they might one day take a bunch of our jobs. It is interesting to think about the things that have changed over the last year and a half as far as the working world is concerned. The amount of young people that desperately want to continue to work at home at all times and never go back into the office. Darn it, I don't want to be in there. I want to do everything from my couch. And those that want to be in the workplace, obviously, of other generations, all the way to what it means if these fights continue to be had, however they're had, if people don't take the jobs that are available to them because that job is, for whatever reason, not good enough, whether that reason is just work from home or something else, and how likely things are to get automated more and more in the future. That's essentially the argument I believe that a part of this documentary is making, is that the longer we as people resist some of those things that are, I guess, jobs that maybe all of us don't want to do, or for whatever reason, the more likelihood that businesses find a way around that problem instead of through it. And I do think that even when Tesla or whoever it is mentions their creations, their robots that are going to be in the working world, that it does add additional components to that part of the conversation. So I guess what I'm trying to say in this long segment is that I'm splinter-free, and I'm very happy about it. I had no coronavirus to be worried about, and that if you want me to work from home or in an office anywhere, I will take that job no matter where it is, because I'm not the kind of person that wants to put that roadblock into my own future. And I think a lot of younger people right now who got used to things a certain way are willing to do that. And even the mask mandates and the other requirements that are coming up, and I'm not sure that the vaccine requirement falls into the same boat. I wouldn't make that argument as lightly. But I think that some of those are continuing to be the same sort of obstacle, the same sort of conversation. And maybe that's the reason for the PBS documentary. Maybe they're putting that out there now because they're like, we're going to put our agenda in a different way. I don't know. but I'm out of time for questions. Greg Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show.